morning. I would like to call this regular meeting of the Muscle Shoals School Board of Education to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, Mrs. Lori Woolfolk will call the roll. I'm sorry. Present.
Here.
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 Dr. Holden, we have a quorum.
All right, first thing on our agenda, Dr. Davis, is approval of the agenda.
Thank you. Board, our first order of business is to approve the agenda as presented. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So move.
Thank you, Mrs. Allman. We have a motion to approve the agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Dr. Holden, the agenda has been approved.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda tonight, Madam President, is the board member code of conduct and affirmations. You have that information in front of you. It was provided in your packet. So since we are starting a new term tonight of the Board of Education, we'll start with those. So if you'll print your name, sign your name, we'll file those on record here at the Board of Education to keep you guys in compliance with state law and the Alabama Association of School Boards. Mr. Wood couldn't be here tonight. I will get with him and get his signature on his document. We'll have that on file also. We'll just pass it this way. I do want to congratulate Mr. Wood, even though he's not here. I've talked with him for being reappointed to another term on the school board, and so we look forward to continuing to work with him. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Davis and Ms. Allman are seated tonight as our officers, and so congratulations to you. Look forward to working with you as board president. All right. So I have no correspondence to present tonight, Madam President, so let's move right along into the business action items. Under the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed the item at a previous meeting. Consent agenda items will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item or vote on it separately, we can pull that from the consent agenda. So for the consent agenda tonight, we have the minutes from the May 22nd and June 12th special meeting. The bills and accounts for May, the May financial report, and those bank statements have been reconciled. From our CNP director, we have 3 recommendations on meal price increases for 23-24, bids for supplemental groceries, and bids for multiple products. Muscle Shoals City Schools is the fiscal agent for a cooperative, and so we are going to accept those bids tonight, pending your vote. And then also the 23-24 salary schedule and the activity and athletic supplement schedules are being presented tonight for your consideration. The appointment of our board representative to the Sick Leave Bank Committee, that's Wimberly Springer, and then accepting a bid that we opened just a day or so, a few days ago, that is the high school boiler and chiller replacement. Does any board member wish to pull anything and discuss it or vote on it separately? Hearing none, Madam President, I recommend approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Holden. Board, the superintendent has recommended approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Madam President, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Allman. We have a motion and a second. Call to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Dr. Holden, motion carried.
Okay, under item B, we have a couple of board policy considerations. The first one is a policy proposal that I recommended back in April. It was tabled at that time. You guys chose to leave it on the table last month for further consideration. So tonight, I recommend removing policy 5.10.5 which relates to employee personal leave from the table for immediate consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Holden. Is there a motion to remove the proposal for personal leave policy 5.10.5 revision from the table for consideration?
I move we move that policy from the table for consideration.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. King and Dr. Rudolph. And now we'll call for the vote. All in favor of removing policy proposal 5.10.5 personal leave from the table for consideration, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We will now consider approving policy proposal 5.10.5 as amended. All in favor of approving these policies, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Okay, and then the next one is policy 7.3.1 on academic standards, our grade scale. You heard a presentation from Ms. Nichols during the work session about why this is necessary. This is a recommendation that comes in consultation with our elementary administrators, elementary teachers, our reading coaches, the Alabama Reading Initiative representatives have all been a part of this conversation, and that group recommends this. So we won't be tabling this one tonight. I'm going to recommend it for immediate consideration. So at this time, I recommend your consideration of item B2, policy 7.3.1, a revision to our grading policy.
Thank you, Dr. Holden. Board, the superintendent has recommended approval for the revision to policy 7.3.1, academic standards, general grade scale. Do I have a motion to approve the revision?
I move.
Thank you, Mrs. Allman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Dr. Holden, the revision to policy 7.3.1 has been approved.
All right, thank you very much. Item C is our personnel report, and I recommend the personnel report as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Holden. Board, the superintendent has recommended the approval of the personnel report. Do I have a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
Madam President, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. We have a motion to approve the personnel report. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Allman. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the personnel report has been approved.
Okay, for the benefit of the audience, the personnel report consists of the following under transfer or reassignment. Bridget Corbel from pre-K auxiliary teacher to lead pre-K teacher at the Early Learning Center. Haley Green from clerical aide at the Early Learning Center to secretary bookkeeper, and that is on a 187-day contract. Under employment, Mary Lindholm, pre-K auxiliary teacher at the Early Learning Center. Under other part-time special appointments or supplemental assignments, nurse substitutes, compensation for one additional block of instruction for Scotty Peoples and Jimmy Gay, who teach health and driver's ed at the high school. We've been doing that for years because of enrollment, large enrollment in those courses. Also, our radio broadcast crew for the fall football season, Tony Word, Brian Lindsay, Clint Reck, and Tim Underwood. Katie Ridgway, as needed, substitute teacher for the summer literacy camp. Also, Vicki Faulkner, gifted ed services as directed by the Director of Student Services. That'll be a contract. And then also you have the 23-24 activity athletic supplement schedules with names. Under the consent agenda, you all approve the positions and the amounts. And with this action, you are approving the people who will actually fill those positions on the personnel report. And then under, had one employee request a medical leave on the personnel report, and that is it. All right, thank you, ma'am.
Board, we will now consider item D on the agenda, the extension of the superintendent's employment contract. As you all know, during our work session, Mrs. Allman and Mr. King discussed the superintendent's evaluation, and then Dr. Rudolph updated us regarding the extension of Dr. Holden's superintendent's contract. So thanks again for all of your hard work on those evaluation and reviewing the contract. So at this time, do I have a motion to approve the extension of the superintendent's employment contract?
I move we approve the extension of the superintendent's contract.
And I will second.
Thank you, Mr. King and Dr. Rudolph. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, Dr. Holden, the extension of the superintendent's contract has been approved.
Thank you very much. All right, under superintendent's report, just have a few things I thought I would kind of report on that are going on this summer. I spoke with Terry Pearson. I speak with Terry Pearson about every day, but this morning especially, just to kind of get an update on a few things that we do. Some of these things are pretty regular, routine things that we do in the summer, such as our annual stripping and waxing of floors and that type of thing. Things that you can only do when the buildings are empty. There are no students in the hallways, but those crews should be finishing up. Maybe he's hoping after the week of the 4th, maybe another week or so, and they should be finishing up. I know we have a couple of schools, McBride and Highland Park, where we have summer camps and things going on, so I think those are going to be the last schools that they do, but he says everything is on schedule there. They are working to reseal and restripe, I think, the parking lot at Highland Park, and they're also doing some parking lot work, I think, over at the Early Learning Center, or will be, because what happens over there is, if you've gone through that parking lot, you have to go all the way up under the awning and around. And so people cut through, and instead of going through the awning and around, and so they're kind of wearing the grass out. So I think they're doing some work in that parking lot to fix that. I've always heard if you want to know where to put a sidewalk, just let people walk around and they'll show you where a sidewalk needs to go. Well, I think our folks are showing us we need to do something right here so that they don't wear that grass out. So that'll be going on before the summer ends too. And that may be news to you, Dr. Woods, but it's good news, right? It's good news. So, and also did want to let you know there was a crew from the city came over today and helped us with a little bit of a kind of a flooding issue. It's a minor thing, but it floods some of our parking spaces right here behind the central office and between us and Hal Graves. It's been a problem for a long time. And so the city came over and they did some curb work and some environmental work, and hopefully to help that water drain a little bit better. Because if this doesn't work, it would be a very expensive fix. So we're trying to avoid that if we can. And but it has been an issue for the employees at Howard Graves and for a long time. And I hate that. It's just kind of a complicated thing. Water's hard to control sometimes. It has a mind of its own. But hopefully this will fix it. We won't have any more issues and have to look at something much greater than that. The project to replace the turf at James F. Moore Stadium, that should be completed. I think the target date is July the 7th is what they're hoping to have the outdoor turf finished. The indoor turf replacement was completed in late May. And, sports facilities, perhaps the most aggressive use of artificial turf. As I told you when you guys considered this, usually has a warranty of about 8 years. I know even the one that we're buying now has got about an 8 to 10 year warranty, depending on, which company you look at, which type of turf you use. But, when you're using it for sports purposes all year long, the way that we do, football, soccer, marching band, we have a lot of community events there. Graduation is there. They use it for PE at McBride in the middle school. So, that surface at James F. Moore Stadium is year-round, daily use. It's very aggressive use. And, you do a little research on it. Anybody that does that, you can see that, it's about a 10-year life on that. This is not like turf you might put down at your house. It might last for 20 years, but when you're using it year-round and it's for sporting purposes, it's a 10-year life on it. And when you guys made that decision 10 years ago, it's been 10 football seasons. It was made pretty clear that we're going to be doing this again in 10 years. Some of you were around working in the system and that type of thing when that decision was made. But, we knew we'd be doing this in about 10 years. It's time to do that. I think in 2021, Coleman High School replaced theirs. They had played on it for 10 years, and they replaced theirs after 10 years. So it was a routine maintenance thing that we knew was coming, and, appreciate your support in getting that done. Because, player safety is what really drove that decision. It was getting so firm that it was getting close to not being safe to play on. And so, when you make decisions based on student safety, that's what you should be doing, and not based on any other kind of thing. All right, enough of that. Administrative retreat. Administrative retreat is set for July 11th through the 13th. We've done a lot of planning for that. and also Institute is something that we do a lot of planning for in the summer. So we're looking forward to that. I think we're going to have a pretty exciting speaker that people are going to be excited to see. And so if you get a chance to be here for Institute, we hope you'll be a part of that. Also, just want to do a quick rundown of information that we received at conference last week. Some of this we talked about during our work session, but the legislature did approve a 2% pay raise for all employees. So we're looking forward to being able to provide that. It's very well deserved and much needed. Tonight, you all approved an additional 1% on top of that for our administrators, for our support personnel. The teacher salary matrix, the minimum state matrix, provides that additional 1% every year for our classroom teachers, but it doesn't do that for our administrators. It doesn't do that for our support personnel. So I appreciate the board being willing to consider that and do the right thing on that as well. Also, I did mention this during the work session, but our nurses, school nurses, we've heard a lot about that group, very, very important group, especially during the pandemic, and I think that really highlighted the need for nurses in our schools. And the legislature did pass some legislation that's going to be very supportive of those folks. They now have a minimum state matrix, and so most of our nurses are going to see a significant increase in their salary just because of the minimum matrix. But we're working through that and trying to determine what that means for us. But I know our nurses are going to be very appreciative of that. Also, something you may not have heard about: our special ed teachers are going to receive a $1,000 stipend that the state is going to provide. I wish it could have been higher. That was the proposal, was for it to be higher. But legislature is not something we can control. They're going to do what they do, but it is definitely appreciated, and hopefully in the years going forward, there'll be a consideration to do a little bit more for them. College and career ready indicators are now a graduation requirement. We've talked about that, I think, already. And something that the high school has done a tremendous job this year on focusing on and, getting those numbers where they need to be and that type of thing. I think the class of 2026 current 10th graders are going to be the first ones that have to have that CCRI indicator. Initially, it was, I think they were still in middle school, but this year, this legislative session, they changed that. So, they wanted to make it for next year's seniors, and Dr. Mackey was like, you can't do that. You can't, senior year, say if you don't get a CRI, you can't graduate. So thankfully, they took a step back from that, and it will apply to our 10th graders that'll be rising next year. Something else that is good news and welcome news is the competitive bid threshold has increased. That's been a really stressful thing this year, especially with the cost of things and the inflationary pricing that we've all had to deal with, trying to keep things under $15,000, and I guess so we don't have to bid it out. I mean, it just got impossible to do, excuse me, but that's been increased to $40,000. So as long as we can keep those projects under $40,000, we don't have to go through the bid process, which just makes it more expensive and it makes it harder and take longer to do. You got to go through that whole process. So I did want to, let me see, open court materials arrived today. So Ms. Nichols is over there pumping the air. This was a concern about everybody, from everybody, that we would get the materials. You guys approved that curriculum. And, I know last year, some districts that adopted open court and some of the others, they still don't have them, and some of them don't, or they got them so late that they didn't even use them last year. So we were really concerned when we adopted open court that could be an issue. But I see that box back there, and I'm sure there's pallets of books everywhere else down in the 15 pallets down there. So we don't have the concern of starting the school year without a textbook and without curriculum. So that's a very, very big thing. And then my last thing, and I hope this is okay to say publicly about you, Mr. Todd Meckes. He is now, his title with the school district is Chief Technology Officer, CTO. But over the last year or 2 years, how long did it take you? A little over a year, he has been going through a very rigorous process to become a certified CTO. He's now certifiable. So let's give him a hand. So congratulations on that. I know that took a lot of work, a lot of time. And, this guy and his staff, they work hard. They're doing a great job. And to be able to do that, and while, leading that program that he has there, and those guys, they do a great job, and I appreciate the work you do. So with that, Madam President, that's all I have.
That's a good way to end the
Yeah.
meeting. Congratulations. Well, thank you, Dr. Holden. This concludes our agenda for the meeting. If there are no other discussions, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.